This happened a few years ago, back when I still lived with my parents. It was during my last couple of years before leaving for college. Around that time, my parents decided to buy a new house and move. The place was pretty far from the city, even farther than most of the suburbs. It was surrounded by trees and felt completely isolated. To me, it looked like a mansion. Maybe not a real one, but it felt huge, especially for just the three of us. My parents said the size made sense since family often came to stay, but I think they just wanted something big and quiet. Anyway, that week was one of the few times my parents decided to fly out to visit our relatives. They asked if I wanted to go too, but I had school and didn't want to miss a week. I told them I'd stay home and keep an eye on the place. That was when I realized something about that house. I hated being in it alone. It wasn't just the size, it was the feeling. The hallways were long, the ceilings were high, and there were so many empty spare rooms that just made you feel like someone else could be there, watching. The house itself was over 100 years old, which didn't help. Even when the lights were on, it never felt warm. The first couple of days, my parents were gone. Everything seemed fine. I went to school, met up with friends, came home, and did normal stuff. Nothing weird. But on the third night, that changed. I got home a little after 6 that evening. It was already dark outside, and I was tired from the day. I dropped my backpack by the front door and headed upstairs, planning to shower, eat something, and watch TV before bed. But as soon as I got to the top of the stairs and looked down the main hallway, something caught my eye. One of the spare bedroom doors was wide open. At first, I didn't think much of it, but I could feel that uneasy feeling crawling up again. I slowly walked down the hallway and peeked inside the room. It was mostly empty, just a bed, a dresser, and some old furniture my parents hadn't decided what to do with yet. Nothing looked strange. I shut the door and told myself I probably left it open earlier and didn't notice. But something about it didn't sit right. My room was at the very end of that hallway, so I passed all those doors several times a day. I knew that door wasn't open before. I always hated when doors were left open in that house. It made me feel like someone could be standing inside, just out of sight. Before I settled down for the night, I walked around the house for a quick check. I didn't go into every room, just walked through the main areas to see if anything looked off. Everything seemed fine, no sign of a break-in or anything unusual. So I tried to shake it off. Maybe the latch didn't catch and the door just drifted open on its own. I went to my room, turned on the TV, and tried to relax. But my mind wouldn't stop wandering. The house was too big and too quiet. I couldn't stop thinking about all the dark spaces I couldn't see. Not that something was there, but the thought that it could be was enough to keep my nerves on edge. After almost an hour, I started to get hungry. I left my room and headed downstairs to the kitchen. The lights in this house were weird. Not every room had one switch that worked, so parts of the place always stayed dark. Walking through it at night meant passing shadows and corners that swallowed light. While making dinner, I kept glancing toward the far end of the living room. Every now and then, I thought I saw movement, like someone shifting just out of sight. But whenever I looked directly, nothing was there. I laughed it off, convincing myself I was just being paranoid. I was tired, alone, and my mind was playing tricks on me. After eating, I carried my plate upstairs. But when I reached the hallway again, I froze. That same door was open again. I just stood there, staring down the dark hallway. My stomach dropped. I knew I had closed that door earlier. I was sure of it. For a second, I thought maybe it really was something paranormal. I never believed in ghosts before, but standing there in that cold, silent house made me question everything. I walked closer, trying not to make a sound. When I pushed the door open, the room looked exactly the same as before. Nothing out of place. I even stepped inside, checking for anything small, like a footprint or something moved slightly, but there was nothing, not a single clue. Feeling uneasy, I went back to my room, shut my door and locked it. I texted my parents, trying not to sound worried, and asked if that spare room door ever opened on its own. They replied fast, saying no, they never noticed anything like that. I didn't want to freak them out, so I said it was probably nothing, but my gut told me otherwise. Something felt wrong. About 10 minutes later, I was sitting on my bed eating and watching TV when I suddenly heard footsteps. Slow, careful steps coming from the hallway. I instantly muted the TV. The sound stopped. For a few seconds, everything was completely silent. Then there was a single dull thump against my bedroom door. My heart started pounding. I didn't move. The air felt heavy. Then I heard it. A soft tapping on the other side of the door. Not knocking, more like someone gently using their fingertips. It felt like time froze. I couldn't even breathe. After maybe a full minute of silence, I finally managed to speak. "Who's out there? I've already called the cops." It was a lie. I hadn't called anyone yet, but I hoped whoever was out there would leave. I figured it would take the police at least 10 or 15 minutes to get there anyway, so I had to stay quiet and think. Then came 3 more knocks. Slow, spaced out, calm. Whoever was there wasn't in a hurry. That scared me even more. That when I actually picked up my phone and dialed 911. I whispered to the operator what was happening, gave them my address, and told them someone was right outside my room. As I spoke, I suddenly heard a scraping sound on the door, one long drag like metal scratching wood. It was the most disturbing sound I'd ever heard. I begged the operator to hurry. While I was still on the line, the door handle began to jiggle back and forth hard. Thank God I had locked it. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely keep my phone steady. Then, after a few seconds of silence, 3 more slow knocks came again. And then, nothing. It stayed dead quiet for the next 10 minutes. I didn't move an inch until I heard voices calling out from downstairs, the police. When I finally opened my door, whoever had been outside was gone. There was no sign of forced entry anywhere. The only thing left behind was a long, deep scratch carved right into the wood of my door. It looked like it had been made by a knife. The police searched around the house, but with how big it was, there were too many places someone could hide. The locks on a lot of the windows were old, and a few didn't even close properly. It could have been anyone. They never found a single lead. My parents came home the next morning after I told them everything. I could tell they didn't know what to think, but they believed me. From that point on, I couldn't be alone in that house again. Every hallway felt darker. Every creak at night made my skin crawl. I'd catch myself staring out the windows, half expecting to see someone standing in the woods. About a week later, it happened again. Not inside, but outside. I was in my room one night when I glanced out the window and saw a shape standing at the edge of the trees. It wasn't moving. It was just there, staring at the house. I blinked, and it was gone. Maybe it was just my mind again, or maybe it wasn't. Not long after that, my parents decided to sell the place. I was so relieved when we finally moved out. To this day, none of us know who that person was, or how they got in that night. All I know is that I'll never forget that sound. The slow, quiet knocking on my bedroom door when I was home alone in that big, empty house.